Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. We are about to have a cool interview with a new friend that we made, Chris Lehto. He's a former military guy, pilot. He's got his own podcast now. He's coming to us from Portugal, my family's homeland. So I think it's nighttime over there. It's early afternoon here for us, Jay. I know you got some cool. Yeah, I know you got some cool questions you want to ask this gentleman, and we're going to find out more about him and what
he's a man after our own heart, that is basically in the same line of work as we are, trying to discover what this is all about and investigate the phenomenon. And it's great that we have him on today.
Yeah, and we've interviewed similar people in the past. It was interesting to watch the questions he would ask those people, the questions we asked them, totally different, but yet still very interesting. So we'll chew the fat a little bit here. We'll talk about all the big late breaking things and everything that's recent. And together we will help educate the world and make it a better place. So that's what we do here. So with that, we'll be back. Yeah, it's warm and fuzzy today.
I love it. I feel it.
All right, let's get her going. Let's roll the music. We'll be right back with Chris Lehto right here on UAP Studies Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of UAP Studies Podcast. My name is Louis Borges. Joining me as always, my best buddy and co-host, Mr. Jason Gilmet.
Hey, I want to wish you a happy birthday, buddy. You just turned 40 yesterday. It is April 16th, the day we're recording this. He was trying to sneak by and not let me know it was his birthday, and I caught on.
I'm not a big birthday guy.
No?
Ever since I grew out of it being not cool to have a party with your buddies anymore, I never really...
But 40th is a big deal.
Yeah, I think I'm in pretty good shape for 40. I think I look all right. I used my wife's fancy face cream. So yeah, here we are. Allows us to do this for a living. And we're joined by another content creator and a military guy, a UAP enthusiast. These are our kind of guys. So today's guest is a retired F-16 pilot, flew for over 18 years. He's a journalist also at the Portugal News. He hosts the podcast, the Lehto Files. And he is the CEO of UAPsociety.com. So very excited to welcome our new friend, Mr. Chris Lehto.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liz. Thanks.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for being on the show. So for our guests our audience that may not know about you, maybe just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, your military career, and then how that led into now producing your own show about UAP and high strangeness.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up in Houston, Texas. Didn't want to live like a normal suburban lifestyle. And I sat next to a guy in physics who told me about the Air Force Academy. And it sounded like an amazing, adventure or something different. And it was challenging. And so I went there actually, and they just told me it was quite difficult, very difficult and terrible at times. And they're just like, yeah, go ahead and quit, just that's all you have to do. It's quite easy. And that's all they had to say, and I'm like, yeah, I'll quit when you kill me, so I made it through there. And then went to had a great time at the Pensacola. So I went to Pensacola after that. You get these for Navy pilot training. So you can select your pilot training. One of the benefits of going to the Air Force Academy is when you graduate, you get first slots at the pilot slots. Because there's different commissioning sources into the Air Force. You can go ROTC, where at these normal universities will have ROTC programs, which is basically little military programs there, and they'll give you scholarships. So I had friends that went to normal schools actually, and then when they graduated, they ended up in the same position, except the Air Force graduates get first slots, or at least when I graduated, at the pilot slots. So went to pilot training. I chose Navy pilot training again. I don't know why, I just can't do anything mainstream, it grates me. And so chose Navy pilot training, which is, supposedly not as good. Of course, the Air Force would say it's not as good. It was better in some ways and worse in others. But went to Pensacola, did training. I was originally going to be a C-130 pilot. That's what I wanted. It'd be cool to fly around with a crew and travel the world, etc. And then I had a simulator instructor. I remember he's like this old crusty Marine dude. And he's like, why the hell would you want to do that? And I'm like, well, I don't know. He's like, you have a chance, son, to fly fighters and blow shit up. I'm like, damn it, you're right, And so I agreed. I made it. You have to get selected. You have to be good enough to go to fighters and then want to do it, And so I signed up for it and made the cut, and then went to pilot training in T-38s, and that was in Enid, Oklahoma. Yeah, you don't need to go and visit, I guess. So Enid, Oklahoma, went there and went T-38s, and then was lucky enough to get selected for F-16s. You basically put in what you want as a fighter. And incidentally, there I got to, in my pilot training class was Rajachari, and he was just the commander. He was actually the commander of the ISS on this last rotation they did. Rajachari, amazing guy. He was in my pilot training class. So long story short, went to F-16s and then went all around the world. Met my wife at my first basic in training in Phoenix, and then she was basically came with me all around the world, and ended up after 18 years flying, etc. Ended up in Spain. I was the commander of a tactical leadership program, which is an amazing program in Europe. It's basically it's an educational program, team building program, where there's basically at the time I think there was 12 nations part of NATO, and they send fighters there, and then we do like this team exercise where you fly these large force engagement missions. It's just so awesome. And then you like go and drink beers at night, and then the next day you just wake up and do it again. And that was my last assignment. Really enjoyed it. We loved Europe, and then decided here to stay in Portugal. And that's kind of how I ended up living here with my family, retired as an F-16 pilot, needed something to do. And, like you guys, I think I just had a creative itch. I don't know. I just have something in me that needs to yap about it or something, and to create content and get it out there. I just have always seen a lot of, I don't know, incorrect, or I think things that are inefficient or dumb or just plain stupid. And I want to contribute, I guess, to the large neural network that I think we're all a part of. So
I wanted to get your thoughts on military people, their experiences, but also kind of the opinions that they're left with. And we've interviewed a few. We've had Sean Cahill, Kevin Day, Ryan Graves. And when you ask them what their thoughts are, like Sean Cahill, for example, him and Lou Elizondo were very like, hey, this is a somber, may not be cool. Ryan Graves is like, I don't know, but I want to find out. And Kevin Day's like, they love us and care about us, and it's a good thing. And, remarkably changed from his experience. Have you noticed that, or do you have any thoughts on why the variance within the military?
I don't know, actually. I guess I didn't know that Kevin Day thought that. I thought I guess he'd had negative experiences from the people.
Yeah.
So I guess the people treated him. I didn't.
Yeah, I
actually have never. I haven't interviewed Kevin Day. I didn't know that. So that's interesting to know.
Yeah. We had him a couple of weeks ago, and he broke down. He cried on the show, and I said, "Now, Kevin, what's the trauma from? Is it from people, the way they treated you, or from the phenomena itself? Like, kind of rattling your world?" And he's like, both. He's like, and I think he's gone through the full array of emotions, but now he's of the opinion that it was a good thing. They're, they love us, they care about us. And then some other guys are very much threat narrative, not cool. We need to know, if there's stuff in our air, for one, but if it's maybe not from here, that's an even bigger deal. So maybe it's just based on the experiences they have. If somebody had a negative experience, they're going to carry that baggage.
But I was going to say, not only on our show, but Chris's program, you see people, for better or for worse, they all have experiences. They all have an emotional response to what took place, whether it's negative or positive or neutral. But it's weird. They all have an emotional response to it, which is important. If somebody's telling you a fib or a lie, they wouldn't be that emotional about it, right? Usually they're quite disconnected. But these guys it's an emotional impact that they've had. So even, watching Chris sometimes and the people that he interviews, it's like you can see there's something there. Like these folks have actually experienced something enough that it creates that emotional response where, how many years later since the incident, and Kevin's still emotional about it, right? So yeah, it's quite fascinating.
Do you have a preferred subject matter, Chris, that you like to discuss? Do you like to go one way or the other in terms of the phenomena?
Well, I guess we just had released the recent video where it was the single source out in Australia. I called it the Narindu Plasma UAP, just because I had a chance to name it, and I was like, I want to name it something cool, like out of Star Wars or something.
Sounds like it, yeah.
and when you first see it, it looks like a flashlight, but ultimately at the end of the day, like after it was 3 months, you get all these compelling you're trying to figure out if it's fake, basically I look at the interview at the video, and I'm like, okay, but at the end of the day, anything can be faked, literally anything. Yeah. And so talking about how to improve at UAP studies, et cetera, how to investigate, I'm definitely learning as I go. And that's how I YouTube as well. And it's often painful, but it's the quickest way, because I know that the community, it's like having two sides in a political, discussion, right? As long as you're aimed at each other and you're checking each other's, I guess, work, you should come to a better answer. But in that case, yeah, what do you do? It's single source. Nothing really can prove it. It seems like a compelling interview, but I post it and I got a lot of comments saying like, I'm moving the discussion backwards. It's, and you mentioned maybe at the beginning where, your UAP Studies podcast, excuse me, is more focused on scientific efforts, So I guess would you guys not publish that video, or what do you guys think?
We get flack too. We had an experiencer on last week. We don't do many just because of the fact that it's hard to corroborate. But if you just chase lights in the sky, you only get so much. So we thought, let's talk to some people, hit every angle we can, right? The burden of proof is not on us. It's on the observer. Take everything in and make your own judgment, right? So, but yeah, we had people that say, hey, it was nice to see you guys went down that avenue and talk to somebody, and other people saying, we lost credibility because we let some guy tell his story, right? So we're not promoting anybody. We're not getting paid by these people, or, there's no benefit to us. We're just saying, hey, consider this. And if we want to make this like an encyclopedia series, you may not enjoy every chapter, but there will be a chapter for you with specifically what you want. But yeah, we notice it too. If we stray too far off of what we've done forever, we get some flack. And then if we don't stray, people are going to say it's the same. So I don't think you can ever make them all happy.
And even to your point about your video, I would have published it like it was a good video, HD. I mean, it's high quality, and even you actually broke it down and showed different clips of lights, at different shutter speeds. That the light intensifies. A green light will become white, a red light will become white, right? But in the video, you can actually clearly see the differences between the colors in an HD format. So it was intriguing, and I would have posted it myself. I think there's something there. And if it's a flashlight, you catch on pretty fast that it's a flashlight, and flashlight doesn't behave that way. There's some similarities, but not to the way the video was.
Yeah, I think it has to be a dedicated hoax, and that was kind of I guess that's what I went with. If I just found this video online and there's nobody there to answer anything, you see all these videos on YouTube, it'll just be some video, and there's no links, there's no discussion or notes or anything, and for that, you're like, obviously I wouldn't have taken that and published it.
Right.
But here's like, there's this person who will answer any question I ask, in seemingly good faith, who knows, and I'm not paying him. Right. And so it's like, what is the benefit there? Am I just getting totally hosed, or, it just doesn't make sense. So it's interesting enough to look into it. But I think it does highlight that at the end of the day, even if he's legitimate, fully legitimate, I can't prove it either. It's impossible to prove that it's real. It can only be proved that it's fake, is what I found. So it's impossible to prove that it's real. So what we really need is, it kind of highlights what is necessary to prove something is even real. And I think you just need multiple videos from the same thing, and as many as you can, human witnesses is I think, single source is just never going to do it.
No. And you mentioned this gentleman goes by the name alias, I think, Michael, but there was somebody else that was with him when that video was recorded, and you said you haven't heard back from that person yet, have you?
And that's also, I figured also publishing the video, getting it out there, and if it's done in a good manner, then that could possibly encourage her to contact me in the future.
Right.
and get more corroboration. And good things. I just like to push, and something's going to happen,
Yeah.
because I figure the important part is it should be the end result, and if your intention is correct, obviously I don't want to push the subject backwards, right? But as from what I've seen is the subject hasn't moved anywhere in 80 years. So it's kind of like, let's push as hard as we can in any direction,
Right.
and maybe we'll push the bag will break in one direction or the other. I don't think having less debate about these things is the right way to go. And I've already learned a lot just in terms of investigating. I learned about right away, I'm going to get metadata as soon as I can, or make sure I get the original film or video with the metadata in it, which is just basically like notes that tell you when it was taken according to the camera, the data in the camera system, and the shutter speeds, and basic things like that. Maybe the GPS coordinates if the phone has GPS. Supposedly in this instance, it didn't have GPS. That phone actually didn't. So I would get the metadata right away. That being said, you can easily fake metadata, right? So you can easily just go in there and you can edit the metadata and you can change the metadata. So again, what I've learned is at the end of the day, it doesn't really, I can never prove it real, but getting more data would filter through the falses. It could filter through the fakes, because it's another hurdle that they have to follow. It's another little data point that you can, layer over all the other data points to make sure it lines up.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard you say that, the breakthroughs in science come from the fringes, right?
Yeah,
like discoveries
always.
are made from those outliers. So if you don't look at different things and, reason all of it, you're not going to find new information. If you just keep looking down that same rabbit hole, you're going to keep getting the same answer. And I watched a portion of one of your episodes where you were going through the Aero report, and you were saying that basically it's a limited data set. They're not factoring in everything, and you can't do good science really unless you look at everything. So I wanted to get a little more of your thoughts in regards to that.
I think 100%, if you collect enough data, I really feel like we can kind of see through a lot of or you can get a better idea of the big picture. Like let's say we collect enough data points, and let's say all of those like UFO reports, and all of those UFO reports are fake. That is a very useful data point to something. There will be some way to leverage that to figure out that information, right? You have to have data to actually do anything.
Yeah.
Having no data is just like you're just in the dark. You're just roaming around in the dark. So you need data, even if it's fake, right? Even if it's fake, it's real data. It's fake data, but it is a data point of something, right? Even if it gives you an idea of just mental psychosis, even it gives you an idea of who are the people that are faking UFOs, or what are the methods. So in that way, I figure I do videos because I want to get to the end answer, and I publish a video every week. So I want to if I can learn every week, then it seems like, if it goes on long enough, then I'll get there, even if I can't investigate it well now, I'm never going to get better unless I start investigating cases and publishing them, and that's really why I figured even with this, I have to publish it. But yeah, focus on the Sky 360 stuff, just aims it focuses me more on that stuff because it's what's needed, I think.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned the data. We were just chatting with Avi Loeb a couple hours ago, and that's what he was saying. He says, people give me a hard time because I don't go into the world of imaginative. He says, but science does not have an opinion. He said, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but if all you're going to do is fight over whose opinion is right or wrong, you never get anywhere. If it's math, it is one answer. That's it. No longer can you have a say and I have a say. The data is the data. So he's just blindly focused on finding irrefutable evidence that nobody can throw stones at. So, we joke around and egg with them and we're like, is there a real UFO guy in there? Is this just science or what? But no, and he laughs, but he comes back to the point of how important it is to just stay data focused, because eventually you will find something, and so, even hearing that at the upper echelon, there are people that are trying to simplify it, kind of like we are, whether it's putting out content, talking with interesting people, whatever, to your point, if you keep going long enough, eventually you're going to get there, right? So
I also think that one of the key points, when Avi Loeb talks about data, though, he doesn't take into account like any of the witness data.
Right.
What about all of the thousands of, anecdotal accounts of these craft or of these sightings or abductions, of these experiences? What did he say about that? Does he even take those into account? I don't know.
Well, we tried pressing him on that. He's been on two times, and
here's the thing: there's enough anecdotal evidence on the UFO subject. You could win a trial in a court of law, but in the court of people's opinion, and in dealing with things like religion and politics, you can't just interject with more opinion. The only way to get people to unite is with facts. So he sees it as a diversion from getting closer to the truth. The more we discuss anecdote, let's just worry. And like some people say, hey, you can't just focus on lights in the sky. You got to talk to the experiencers, which I agree. And he's saying, screw the experiencers. You can't prove it. If I focus on lights in the sky and Galileo Project gives real evidence, we're good. Like, I will have stuff that nobody can then break down. So it's not like he's throwing out that portion, I don't believe. I just think he's more focused on things that people can't throw stones at. And he's good at being, playing it safe too, because he is a Harvard professor, an astronomer. He's got a big reputation and he's working on a lot of things. So he didn't really give us a straight answer to answer your question, but he's more convinced that the data alone will lead us home. But to your point, I think we should take in the witness account, because again, if this was a court and you had 25 or 25 million witnesses, it would be open and shut case.
But even like within the subject of that, you have like the Department of Defense or Congress has that, what are they called now? I have a hard time with their acronyms. I can't keep up with them, but their investigation into UAPs, and it's an all domain thing, right? Like, so it's space, air, and water. Arrow. Thank you.
Yeah, all domain anomaly resolution office.
But
I love that resolution office. Like, we're so vague. We're going to figure this thing out and just resolve it. That's what we're here for. Like,
let's get this done. But no, even with their reports, they don't mention when these things land, right? There's no mention of that. And then what about the interactions that people are having or saying that they're having with these occupants of these crafts, be it good or bad? They don't mention that at all. It's almost like that we're willing to investigate if they're real, but we don't want to address all these other subsections that come along with the possibilities that these things are real. And there's a lot to it. How far down the rabbit hole have you gone, Chris? Like, where did this lead you, like, from start to now? How wide is your basically opinion on this subject? Like, how much growth have you had?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. I think 180 degrees.
Yeah.
Well, I went from believing that there's nothing past the material realm, to being like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And once you say, well, that doesn't make any sense, and backed by physics, apparently, once you, I guess, come to that realization or consider that or believe that or whatever, then, there's the extrapolations are almost too much, That's why I think you mentioned, Lewis, you were talking about the variation in thoughts on the matter, and I think there's just, because nobody knows and the truth, I think, or we don't know at least, and so your extrapolations just get so crazy.
Yeah, and we become a target because they always say never discuss two things with your close friends: religion and politics. And this topic is on a knife blade for both, because if there is alternate life, that might shake some fundamental religious beliefs that if it's not written here, it never happened. And if it's true and the government has known about it and choose to conceal it, there's major government and political implications. So we're one toe in, one toe out on two very polarizing topics, but yet somehow we find unity. Even the people that agree and disagree, we don't go to war over it. We seem to handle it better, even though don't go on UFO Twitter, because it'll show the worst of humankind has to offer. But it also shows the passion behind this. Like, we really want to figure it out. there's guys trying to put a wooden peg in a round hole, and there's people searching in the desert for water, but the passion behind it, it's changed so many people's lives, motivated. And I mean, you talk to any witness, they really don't care whether you believe them or not. They know what they saw, even if it is psychosis, right? It's hard to speak to somebody when their mind is that well formed. So I do like the scientific approach, but it's hard not to imagine and have your, if you go where the data is, and we interviewed Jacques Vallée and he's changed his mind a dozen times.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to get closer. If you just throw out the inconvenient truths, you're not really doing yourself a favor, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I guess I have that luxury. You kind of mentioned Avi Loeb. He has, he is limited by a lot of things. Basically his position, his background, his career, and he's leading the Galileo project, etc. So yeah, he is limited. So I can definitely see that. So I'm not, but I'm not. So it's awesome. I've set it up. I should even probably take sponsors just to make a little bit more cash, but I don't. Because I don't want to. I spent 24 years, in the Air Force, under the man's thumb. No, it was the Air Force is amazing. I did really love it. Yeah, but
your Air Force time, your Air Force time sounds a lot like Top Gun and Maverick. Just you had a blast flying, and you had all these opportunities and stuff like that comes in. Just out of curiosity, side question, has nothing to do with UAPs, UFOs, but how realistic are those movies? Just because some of those maneuvers, I think there's no way they could pull it off. So I'd like to ask somebody that's actually flown an F-16, is this possible?
Yeah, you should, if you like the Top Gun Maverick movie, I loved it. You should check out my review video I make on it.
Yeah? Okay, I'll check it out.
I spent a lot of time on it. I was like, this video is gonna do awesome. It's a great video. I like, I watched it again. I mentioned it on another podcast and then watched it after, and nobody watched it. It was like,
really?
People
That's
were like, we don't care. I spent all this time. No, whatever. I mean, but it's a great movie, and they did a great job in that movie. Actually, the realism.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously Hollywood, and that's not actually how it is, but it's a the book perspective of it. There's definitely many of the elements are real. Yeah, I go through a lot. I took notes when I was watching the movie, and we watched it again. So we liked it a lot. It's a great movie. I thought it was really well done.
One of the sections that for me linked it to the UFO stuff was when he was in that really fast plane, and I think he's flying at Mach 9 at this point or something. It's ridiculous, but for him to be able to turn, it would take him an entire state, and I forget which state they mentioned, but it would take him that much space to be able to make a turn. And these UAPs and UFOs that pilots like yourself are reporting go from one direction to a right angle right away and never lose speed or momentum. It doesn't take them a long time to do that. They could just do it on a blink. As somebody who's flown planes as much as you have, like, what would happen to you physically with the current laws of physics as we understand and experience them? What would happen to you if you were aboard something that's able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the limit is 9 Gs for aircraft, a human in an aircraft, essentially sustained. Right. So you're not going to be able to pull more than 9 times the gravity, which is how fast you can turn, essentially. How fast you can accelerate. It's really how fast you can turn. So the problem is if you're going so fast this way and you go to turn that way, now you're limited to 9 Gs. And that's why that turn radius is so big, that's why it takes so many miles and miles to turn.
Right.
Same thing if you're fighting, if you're going to get into a dogfight, and some people do, the younger guys maybe mess up. If you merge with them and they're going supersonic, the problem is your turn circle gets much, much bigger when you're supersonic, so if I'm at 0.98 Mach, I'll turn right behind you. If you're going 1.0 Mach, actually, you'll just be way out in front, and I'll just turn right behind you and shoot you. So,
wow.
Ultimately, you can't do that. So if you're actually inside a craft that can do that, my guess is you would feel nothing inside that, because it seems to act with no inertia. It's moving as if it's a light, like a hologram, something like that.
Yeah, going from still to an incredible speed with absolutely no momentum building up to it. It's just instant at that speed, which I still
Or
can't
even
think of anything that
dropping,
does
like a
that,
tic
right?
tac going from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second. Like
Yeah.
it would liquefy any inhabitant. It's got to be making some kind of a bubble, something to protect it from the laws of physics. Because I'm a big Formula One fan, and the limitation in Formula One is not the car, it's the man in the car. They can make the cars even faster, but there's no human on the planet that can react fast enough and not kill himself. It's not the machinery, it's us. So that's why it makes it that much more interesting when you see things making 90-degree turns, taking off at thousands of miles an hour. I don't think any biology without some kind of a shield could really sustain that. And I'm not an engineer, but it just kind of makes common sense, right? Chris, I want to ask you.
Well, I don't even know how you do that, right? Because no, you have to accelerate. To get the way we understand how inertia works is you have to. You can't just go from 0 to 100 miles per hour immediately.
Right.
Nothing can.
Yeah.
It has to go through that. It's a linear process. So I don't know how they even do that. It doesn't make sense. That's why it defies the laws of physics. One of the 5 observables. So
Right.
Yeah.
And a person like yourself that is like you guys are the most credible witnesses that we have in the sky. You are the most trained person. Like how many millions of dollars do they spend training you guys to be observant and to know your stuff when you're up there? So when we hear reports from other fighter pilots, which some have been on your show and you talk to all the time, probably behind the scenes, it's most of every pilot has seen something at some point during their career that they cannot explain, that they have no way of identifying as a professional or an entity. We often joke about how, like, if somebody, like, let's say Louis here, who just turned 40 years old, he's got 40 years of experience being a human, right? So he knows what's possible for humans, what's not possible for humans. We discredit that as people and observers now. If they're just the general population, well, you must be seeing things, or it must be a government program. But in your case, you're the most trained observers. And we have pilots after pilots coming out saying, yeah, something's not right. We weren't able to identify, or it did something to our machinery. When you hear that as an investigator now, like, what are your thoughts? Like, do you think that there's definitely something to the military aspects with these entities? Because they seem to be always interacting with the military in some form.
Well, I guess I don't think most pilots see these things. Or if they do, then they're really not talking about it at all. They're just keeping it to themselves. I haven't seen a UAP. I don't remember seeing anything that I couldn't identify or felt the need to go and identify. Maybe
Right.
there was something there I didn't. But I don't remember a case, and I don't remember anyone coming and telling me they saw a UAP. That being said, I have heard a couple cases, and there's one other YouTuber, Max Afterburner. He doesn't do UAPs at all, and I've actually wrote him a few times to ask him if he would talk about I don't think he wants to talk about UFOs, or he does. I don't think he wants to talk about me, or maybe he just didn't see my emails, right? But he talked about a UAP on there where it was a reverse explosion. It was like he saw a fireball like come back together and then disappear, something like that, like a fireball implosion when he was on a low level, just split second type thing. So I think it does happen. I think maybe the military. They maybe feel like they're bound by some sort of maybe honor to talk. I think honor and duty is really beat into us in the military. I think,
Right.
and I think integrity is super important, critical. It's it's the first core value of the Air Force, and so maybe that's part of it, is that they just feel like they should, and the main reason I think you wouldn't is some sort of fear. It's going to be fear of whatever, fear of ridicule, fear of loss of your career, fear of, your friends and family looking at you weird or something.
Right.
So I think it's maybe they're used to, at least for myself, right? For me, at the end of the day, I was able to publish, which I think is probably one of the hardest things you can do, is really publish online any sort of personal books or stories. I get a lot of complaints from people, but they're all anonymous. These people aren't really sharing any sort of personal details. Right? And when you go to that length and you publish a nonfiction book, or you publish a fiction book even with your real name, I think you have to overcome a very big step of fear, and you have to pass that. I wasn't a drama person growing up. I would see people acting. I was like, I would never do that. Actually, shy. So it's not so easy. I think overcoming fear is maybe just and required feel some sort of duty or in honor and integrity to blow past that. I guess.
And in terms of fear, I want to get your opinions on the threat narrative. We ask a lot of people this, we get varying answers. So what are your thoughts on this phenomenon and the threat level associated with it?
Yeah. I guess, how do you define the word threat?
Well, some people have said a threat can be the fact that it's in our skies and we don't know, or it can be a direct threat from our adversaries, or, the fact that we have data and we can't release it is a threat to revealing our sensors and how, maybe how good they actually are. So the threat is different for everybody, but I'm asking more in terms of like a malevolent thing, like there's something out there, it's not good, and versus the opinion of they're here to save us and help us.
Yeah, I guess so a threat really, it comes from a lack of knowledge, I think.
Right.
Is really, you don't know if someone else is going to attack, right? We don't know if China is going to attack the US. We suspect it, right? Even though I'm more worried about the US attacking. So it's really, there's a lack of information, right? If we know that our friends are friendly with us and our allies would never attack us, even though they have more than the capabilities, right? They have more capabilities than our adversaries, but we have knowledge, we have information that they are not going to, to the best of our ability. And you notice when that gets way out of whack, right? When one nation gets way more powerful than the other nations, then it also upsets the balance. Yeah. Because even with the knowledge now, they have a knowledge that they cannot beat the enemy, right? They then know that if they are unmatched, then there is literally nothing they can do in that case. So I guess it would be, what are the two cases? If for me, if you look at all the abduction cases and everything going back 80 years, and if it is true, and there is aliens here, then the fact we don't know is very suspicious. And so it's either they're hiding it for our benefit or they're hiding it for their benefit, right? Yeah, and right. So I think it comes down to that question, if they're here, because you have to look at your threat tree, right? Okay, if they're not here, no threat. Okay, no worries. All right, if they are here, so we need to figure that out first. Then the next thing is, are they here to help us? Or why haven't we heard about them the whole time, right? Because ultimately, we can scrounge around all we want and get these witnesses, but if it is going on, the fact that we don't know is a really bad indicator that it is a threat, right? And at any rate, we would have to figure out the first question in order to go to the second and say, are they here to help us or not? And what I hear, and I guess I'm in the undecided camp because we lack the information. So how can you say it's not a threat if we don't know those key pieces of information? But then how can you say that they are a threat if you can't prove any, I guess, actual harm?
And there's two threats. I mean, it's the threat, like their threat, and then our threat, meaning how we react to their existence, or if we possess their technology, what's the purpose of our reverse engineering? Is it to propel humanity into a better age, or is it used for warfare again, like we always do? Every time we discover anything like gunpowder or, microwaves or explode, it's like, how can I use this to kill another person? That's how we create our technology. That's what I'm more aware of these days, I guess, is that in our hands, this technology is a threat to us. So even if they don't mean it, just the fact that we would have some of their technology, it's a potential threat for humanity. Just look at what we did with nukes. Mm-hmm. Like, how many nukes do we have now in the world? Like 10,000 nukes, or like, it's a ridiculous sum of amount of world destroying rockets. and they're just waiting there, just sitting there. It'll be the same thing with their technology. That's what I'm worried about, is what are we going to do with it? Because obviously they can handle it by the way that they're maneuvering in our skies and water. They're able to handle this. We are not capable of it. I think we're not probably mature enough for that technology. That's my biggest issue on this whole reverse engineering thing, because it's great if we can create things that benefit humanity, but that hasn't been our track record as a species at all. That worries me. I think that's an aspect of ufology we never talk about, is what do we do once the proverbial shit hits the fan and the truth comes out. There's going to be a bunch of repercussions, right? So that's some I'm a little bit more worried about.
I guess I am, but I'm also hopeful, because I think we're in a unique time in history where I think technology's reached a point. I think we've essentially globalized. And I think we have a large enough kind of neural network built with the internet now. And now I think with ChatGPT and all these other AI programs coming online, et cetera, that we won't actually be in a scarcity environment. I don't think we'll be in a resources limited environment here in about 5 to 10 years, unless America does something stupid, right? I honestly believe that. So in 10 years, I think people won't have a need to fight other people. If you look back, most wars, if not all of them, are done for economic reasons, for purposes, or out of fear that I will get my stuff taken, essentially. They're going to come take my guns. That's it, right? I'm going to get my guns taken.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to get my stuff taken. Even look at nations, like we lived in Spain, and, Catalan's a huge issue. Obviously, they've had major issues. But the Spanish don't like Catalan necessarily. I'm getting huge trouble for this. But what you realize is they want to leave, right? Everyone votes to leave, and that the main country never lets them leave. Look at the United States. That's what's the first Civil War was essentially, was fought over the South wanting to leave the Union, essentially. Slavery, yes, but fought over leaving. Luckily there was no violence or everything, but look at the huge upheaval caused by the UK leaving, right?
Yeah.
Because you could sign up, when you sign up, of course you can leave. You can leave whenever you want, but man, they made it a pain in the ass, didn't they?
Yeah.
Happened in Canada too.
Yeah.
Jason will know
They
better than all
divorced
of
him
us.
for it.
Quebec wanted to separate, and we didn't realize that wouldn't work, but we had a referendum and they voted. It could have happened, right?
Yeah. Well, on the verge. The geopolitical system can change overnight. It's crazy.
I think I'd rate is how mature is your country, right? If they voted and that happened and there was no really huge war and everything, I'd be like, man,
yeah,
they're better than us, like they've done it, they figured it out. I think countries are the problem, and just like every other organism on this planet, I think they're gonna do what all organisms do, and so they don't really care about us.
Yeah.
I wanted to go down the woo hole for 1 second here and just get your thoughts on things like cryptids and poltergeist and hitchhiker effects. Do you have any opinion one way or the other, or are you familiar with these type of things?
I don't know what a cryptid is. What's
a cryptid? Bigfoot, Skinwalker, Mothman, anything
bipedal creature,
not even
as far
Mothman.
as I
don't
can
think
understand.
just like legends and tales of creatures that have half a foot in this realm and half a foot in the other, shapeshifters, kind of some of the things people have theorized happening in Skinwalker Ranch, things changing form and Bigfoot and messing with us.
I mean, I haven't looked into it really much more than, a few weeks watching videos over my 2.5 years, probably,
Yeah.
I don't, it was almost like too far in the woo, like there's like a woo ladder, I think. And I think Bigfoot's like towards the end, just because it has such a name. Watch all the movies.
Like
I've been so
stigmatized, like that.
So stigmatized against Bigfoot that it's like, am I really investigating Bigfoot? And that you have to step that line, and I'm sure I will, because it makes sense that you would have some sort of interrelated portals, timelines. At least there's an argument to be made that you could have some sort of primates, or maybe that's an alien. Maybe aliens look like Bigfoot, and that.
It's like their dog they just let out every once in a while to go to the bathroom, We just happen to spot it, right? Who knows?
Well, we were polarized, Jay. I've always said I think there's a chance of Bigfoot, and you were like, no. And early on in the show, we were going to talk about it, and you're like, no Bigfoot. Then we chat with George Knapp. I'm like, hey, George, what do you think about Bigfoot? He's like, oh, yeah, there's something there. Jason's like, I guess we got to talk about Bigfoot now because George Knapp said so, So
yeah,
it's good to have that paradigm shift. And you start here thinking, oh, we're nuts and bolts UFO guys. We're going to figure this thing out in no time. And next thing you know, you're delving into consciousness and cryptids and remote viewing and just everything. And it's like, wow, the deeper you go, the more you find there is to go. And there is no floor to this thing. So don't be scared of the Bigfoot. That's all I'm saying. Don't be scared. We're not a Bigfoot show, but I don't think Bigfoot will hurt you. Just go with it.
Yeah. So that I just haven't researched it. Actually, I talked to DJ and he's like, to all, given all these case examples, etc. So yeah, I just haven't researched it. I'm hugely interested in the remote viewing aspect and the meditation links with the stuff in Mount Wilson Ranch.
Yeah.
With all, the Monroe Institute, spoon bending.
Yeah.
And then related to life after death. So NDEs. I don't know. I got on like this NDE kick. Did that just come onto YouTube, or has it been there for years?
No, I think Leslie Kane has been talking about it for a while. Experiences and things like that. But exactly. To what you were saying about remote viewing, though, I chatted with somebody. I can't mention his name. Used to work for the program, and he's talking about like remote viewing the moon. There's stuff there, underground bases. When you do these astral projections, sometimes the entities you're looking at become aware that you're there, and just like blew my mind. It started as just a casual question. Next thing you know, we're 4 hours into it, and I'm just like, this is unbelievable. Like, I don't know how you would prove any of it, but it seems like there's a lot there. I think we have more of a weapon than we think, and we can use it in any way that we like, for good or bad. And to your point of near-death experiences and consciousness and all that, that's another polarizing thing. People are like, no, keep it UFOs. Don't talk about consciousness and all that.
Yeah.
You can't anymore. It is too closely linked. Too many people telling us there's something there. We don't know. But again, go outside, go to that fringe, take it all in, and kind of make your own observation, right?
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, Chris, like with what Louis just mentioned there, what have you found since you started this, YouTube channel and investigating? Like, what have you found has changed for you in the last few years? Like, have you had any opinions change on any subjects or topics, or were you introduced to something that you didn't think of before?
I think probably what we were just talking about is going to a remote viewing angle.
Right.
Like you guys said, you start as nuts and bolts, scientists, at least in college, etc. And then what you find is where is the evidence leading you? And then you're like, well, is it my own bias, or is it and I'm like, well, I don't know. I keep ending up back to, looking into this consciousness aspect. And I think that's where Avi Loeb will miss a lot if he's not, at least maybe if he's not saying it publicly, if he doesn't consider it privately, is that what about all these accounts? So if it, I guess what I'm thinking is that there's we don't firmly understand our current reality. And if you look at all the, like the NDEs, right? If you look at it, they're all very surprisingly, shockingly similar. I don't know if they're edited that way or something, but it really leans towards what all of our religions have kind of been held captive to the humans, maybe something, is there some beyond life reality? And this is like a made up sort of metaverse. They say in the NDEs, this is like a play or some sort of metaverse. Well, I mean, thinking about that, it does make more sense to me, because I just can't understand, if you look into time and how it works and the hard problem of consciousness and experience and all this, I just can't understand how you and me right now can be having this conscious experience, but then at some point in the future, it's just not going to happen. And that's always been an issue for me since I can ever remember. Is I bet if I think, therefore I am, how the hell is that going to stop? I guess is and what was it before?
Right.
What was your consciousness before? So is it? And then if you're nothing before, then how can you be something now, and then you're going to be really nothing later? It just never made sense to me, and it still doesn't make sense unless all these NDEs are some sort of reality.
Yeah.
And growing up, religion was also the same thing. Didn't make sense to me, but everywhere you look, someone is religious in some way. There's some manner, there's something there as well. And they're also surprisingly, shockingly similar. So it's almost like they're different languages for the same kind of concept. The religions are kind of different languages for the same concept of whatever this existence is, or following existence. So long story short, if you go that deep, right, then what it kind of entails is that there is a reality outside of what we're currently experiencing. And these UFOs or UAP events could be coming from that reality, or passing through our reality that we can actually physically experience right now, right. Passing through it, right? And they may have technology that can manipulate, and can manipulate even to our thoughts, right? Because if this is not the real reality, imagine you're like in the Matrix, right? Literally the movie The Matrix. And someone comes up to Neo, he's in there, right? He's jacked in. And someone comes up and pokes on his eyelid or something. He's going to see like a UAP maybe while he's in there. I see a UAP. Is it something crazy like that?
Yeah.
That's what I've thought, like if we're in the Matrix or something like that. I mean, and again, you're never going to find it if you're not considering it or even looking at it. And I don't think you need to spend tons of time on these concepts, but it should be at least somewhere in the solution set. You mentioned it. Like I say, Luis, is that you're always going to have, or most breakthroughs in science have come to the outliers. So if your scope's too small, then you're never going to get to the right solution. And we don't know the base reality. So our scope should not be small. It should be very, very wide. You mentioned how wide have you gone? And Jason, it's very wide. So I'm trying not to spend too, I don't want to waste people's time. But I do want to consider all the options.
Well, even
Sorry, I was just going to say, the thing I find cool about this whole consciousness is we can perform very basic experiments that yield a result. We don't know why or how, but for example, like Dean Radin doing a random number generator tests, somehow or other, it works. If you focus on making more ones than zeros, it does. Or if people are trying to affect something in a hermetically sealed device somewhere and they're trying to, prove entanglement, it works. Or like the slit test. As soon as you observe it, it changes, and they're getting a glimpse of what happens from potential energy into matter and that sort of whole Planck scale thing. So we can recreate this at a tiny, tiny level, a very archaic way, but it still points to there's something here. So I don't think we need to get more chalkboards of formulas. We need to simplify what we already know. And maybe some of the most basic things will yield the actual answer. And if Avi Loeb is right in what he told us a few hours ago, he thinks he's figured out that missing element of dark energy. And that's insane. People have been looking for this for decades. So he's going to produce something in a week, he says, one way or the other. So we are right there in terms of potential big news for everything, and if somebody finds a big, discovery in science, maybe that will aid this UAP search as well. It can't hurt it anymore. And as you mentioned earlier, Chris, we haven't really made many strides in 80 years. So let's step out of our circle a little bit, because what do we got to lose?
Yeah, I think you hit local maximums.
Right.
Technology goes through local maximum jumps where you just can't get there from here. Look at the electric car revolution that's going on. The OEMs, the old legacy manufacturers, are having a really difficult time transitioning to electric, where it's usually a startup, right? Tesla's a startup, comes from outside the industry. If you look at all new disruptive companies, right, it never comes from inside the mainstream. It comes from outside, a disruptive technology, usually because you can't just iterate to get to the final solution. Basically, you can start with a gas engine, but you can't just keep iterating a gas engine and make it better and better and better and end up with an electric engine,
Right.
like the technology, the starting assumptions, the whole, everything, how it works are just completely different.
Right.
So that's what, it's not in your solution set, right? You're ruling out only electric engine because you're just going to continue iterating. It's like a spiral, it'll just keep iterating, but you're never going to get over here.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the biggest issue, is that we're in just a local maximum where everyone's just accepted that this is the most we're going to ever learn. Obviously there's nothing there. We haven't learned it so far, so it's not going to happen. And usually what happens is it comes out of kind of left field. Everyone's shocked by it, and it's simple. I believe it's going to be, the answer is going to be simple.
Yeah.
It's not going to be complicated, as complicated as we make it out to be. Life and everything is already just ridiculously, amazingly complicated. But I think just dark energy, I think what we're going to find in dark matter is that the starting assumptions are just so ridiculous. They're wrong. They're just so wrong. And you look, they're finding it out every day, right? Look at the James Webb Space Telescope. I'm so pumped. I can't believe like the 310 single points of failure or miracles or whatever. I can't believe that thing's out there,
Yeah.
Yeah. If there's multiverse, there's certainly many other, universes where it's not out there, but it got out there. And so what it's showing is that the Big Bang, which I thought was also one of these things that sounded like BS I've thought that for 2 decades. I've been ranting against the Big Bang. And again, people think you're crazy, but if they look now, and now James Webb is showing us that it's almost, I think, 200 million years after the supposed Big Bang, that galaxies, they found a galaxy fully formed. So basically that means that the Big Bang is not correct. Like that theory is blown out of the water.
Right.
Yeah, because it takes more than 200 million years to form a galaxy.
It takes billions, right? In their current argument, it's, first the hydrogen formed, and then the helium. This made up argument, this made up story that we believe, right? That you can't say that you're against. They're finding out it's not true. It's blown away by the James Webb, and because the galaxy, they're finding fully formed spiral galaxies bigger than our own Milky Way, 200 million years after the supposed redshift ends. That's again the universe is expanding, right? This other idea because that's what fits the math, right? That's what fits our math models.
Yeah.
Is that the universe is expanding. I'm not saying that it's not expanding, or I think it's not expanding. I won't be as surprised in the least if we find out it's not expanding as we understand it, that space is not expanding. That it's just some other weird concept that we're not even considering.
Sort of like science, and the way we understand it's almost like grade school for elementary, kids. Like, as I remember, my daughter would come home from kindergarten and she would show me the things that she learned at kindergarten, right? And it's cute, but that's the stage that she was at. That's her world. That was her understanding. And then as the years go by, every time they're at a different level of understanding and scientific awareness, she comes home with different stuff now, like, hey, did you know this and this and this? And it's really cool. But I keep thinking about us as a species. We're relatively new to science, like we just discovered that stuff. So for us to think, well, this is the absolute, we live within this parameter because that's the theories we come up with. Where in fact, we're not even at grade 1 right now. We're still, we still have to graduate and learn a lot more to get to where I think this phenomenon is leading us, which is a little bit above our pay grade right now, but at least we're aware of them. And that's the start, is to be aware that there's something going on here. But that's just my theory.
Yeah, I think of it, I think you made a great argument or point. And I think that's where we are as a planet. And what I see is that the nations are joining together. I think we're building into one giant cell, if you will, like one neural network. And I think it's going to be awesome. I think we can make it great for humans. We can clean up the planet, and I think you can still have your own countries and have your own cultures.
Yeah.
I don't think we can go to some other example besides war. But I see that as what's happening is that we're actually, the cell is forming. And I think we're going to find we're surrounded by many other, probably billions of other cells, very similar to ours,
Right.
maybe even in a similar timeline. You know, if you look at an organism like your body, when it grows, all the cells around it are probably around the same age and structure. So we could be surrounded by other worlds, other, literally billions. I would be optimistically surprised.
Yeah.
Especially if they had a 1,000,000-year head start or a 10 million year or more. I mean, where would we be in 1,000 years from now based on the last 200 years of industrial revolution? We can't even imagine that, right?
I think we're in the fastest revolution that's ever going to have happened.
Yeah.
It was my 4th video I made on YouTube, basically from ARK Invest. I don't know if you've heard of them. It's a US firm. They're an investment firm, but they write good articles, and they wrote this article on basically the 5 innovative technologies that are happening right now. And they list them out, and they say each one of these technologies is basically as impactful as the telephone or the internet.
Wow.
They list them out, and this is really the first time where 5 in a row have really matched at the same time. And it's all powered by AI. So AI is the first one. Blockchain is the second one. It's like your verifiable digital contract systems.
Yeah.
Then you have battery technology, and robotics was that 4, and genetics is the 5th. Right. So that's what they said. And I thought it was amazing, because if you look at that, you have AI is like your processing, your thinking. Blockchain is your memory. So that's like how you store your memory systems. Your robotics is your mechanical movement. Your batteries is like your energy store, like your fat storage.
Mm-hmm.
And then your genetics would be, that's how it would link. It would link to consciousness. So basically, we're building like a super being, if you think of it, which we're each made up of trillions of little tiny cells and beings anyway. So that's what I think. So I guess I'm optimistic that we'll get there. I think that's what's happening. If you look at how life systems actually work, I'm blanking on his name. The scientist, he actually does the genetics. Oh, I haven't researched that video in a while. Sorry, it's late here. It's
I don't blame you. I'm horrible with names,
Sunday.
Chris. Yeah, I'm horrible with names, so I don't blame you.
I feel terrible. He's going to win the next Nobel Prize in genetics, probably. Darn. Anyway, blanked on it. Okay, so anyway, what he found is that if you take a frog, right, take a tadpole, right when it comes out, before it's developed, and you squiggle the eyes and the mouth and everything around, right, like manually, what'll happen is the cells, they will actually know how to reform back into the original frog tadpole shape. Right, the eye will move back. The eyes will move back. It won't look the same. It'll look like kind of weird. Like you can see, he's got these little examples of these. I mean, it's terrible, poor tadpoles. But what it means is somewhere in there is a code. There's some sort of coding. He thinks he's found it because he's able to code these little creatures genetically by electronic pulses. But somewhere there's a code that the organism knows what it's supposed to look like in the final phase, right? Like when your arm chops off, why doesn't it just go back out to a full new arm?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Lizards can do that.
Yep.
So how does it know, right? It falls off. So now new cells are just forming. It's not like they have them, they must have a blueprint somewhere actually, because it was what it sounds like. There's some sort of blueprint. But the point is life is going to aim towards that final structure. It's going to aim towards that final structure. However we get there, I think, or die, right? So I think it could be quite painful. Maybe there'll have to be terrible wars, or that's part of the growing process to get to that final structure. But hopefully it doesn't need to be that painful. I think with information, we talked about threats, right? But if we know, we can figure it out. We can figure out that we don't need to be a threat, at least to China. America doesn't need to fear China. China doesn't need to fear America. Russia can have its own country, whatever, just try and not invade your neighbors. So I think that can be in the future, because of that maybe there is a structure. that we're aiming towards, you can kind of feel it, you know, and I think no one can keep up with it. No human can keep track of all the innovations going on. Like, look at the innovations, pick an industry, look at James Webb. You know, the more we know about the universe, for every question we find out, we get 100 more questions.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I think it's just I think we'll continue to find where we have a universe to expand into. I don't know. Very excited.
Nice. Chris, we thank you so much for coming on. Louis, do you have any final questions for our guests
Yeah,
today?
we'll do a plug for your show. Where can people find you? And if they want to subscribe and like your content, where can they find you?
Excellent. It's you can search for my name, Chris Lehto, on YouTube is where I put most of my content. It's called Lehto Files. Or there's my Twitter. I like Twitter as well. That's like kind of the town square. So at Chris,
not too many attacks, Chris. You don't get too many attacks on Twitter.
I mean, I do. It is frustrating, but then I also there is good debunking, you know, so I can go and spend hours on my own and not even come up with probably a good answer. Or I can go spend a few minutes just wrestling with the debunkers, you know?
Yeah.
I think everybody should take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of trolls out there. There's a lot of disinformation. I try and keep emotional control.
Yeah. What's worse is when somebody like yourself is doing all this research and putting all this time, and let's face it, as a family man, this sort of stuff that we do, you know, it takes time away from the family, right? It's a sacrifice that you make to put this out. So when you just get attacked by somebody who's sitting on their couch eating Cheetos and just replying to you on their phone, there's nothing more aggravating than that, right? And Louis and I are going through that ourselves. So hang in there. You're doing a good job. The more trolls you have, that means that you're hitting a nerve, right? So
that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah,
You have to remember
exactly.
that. You're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're totally right. It means that there's something there, I think, or there's we need traction.
Yeah. And there's more people that are going to be supporting you and following what you got to say than naysayers that are going to be trying to troll you, right? They're just trying to elicit a response from you and go, oh, I got him good because he replied, right? Just they die if you don't water them, right?
The guy just wants to be known. He wants his 5 minutes of fame.
Yeah.
Let him have it. If you're hitting a nerve, you're doing it right. That's what we've been told time and time again. So good on you for that. And thanks for being on our show. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
I know it was difficult. You're in my family's motherland of Portugal, and I'm here in Canada with Jason. But we figured it out. We made it happen. We had an informed, educated chat. You're our kind of guy. You're welcome back here anytime. And in fact, we'd love to have you back anytime you got some free time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And happy to have you guys on UAP Society sometime.
Oh,
sure.
Anytime.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you guys on. Thanks for having me.
Perfect, Chris. Thank you so much.